This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and it's a real privilege to be with you today. Today, we got a really exciting topic to talk about. It's something that kind of simmers on the back of people's minds. They don't really think about it too much, and usually it comes up when it's kind of too late. And today, we're talking about when is it time to step down as a leader? Whether you're at the top of the food chain, you're a business owner, you're a CEO or president of a company, or even in other, mid-level management roles, right? Every leadership position is temporary, right? And there's always a good time to come in. There's always, the right time to leave. And sometimes people struggle with that and things happen fast. And so I get this question quite often, when is it time to leave? How do you know when it's time to step down and move on and do different things in your career? So we're going to be exploring that and talking through that today. These are things that I have personally experienced in my career myself, as well as the people that have worked for me, and going through these different types of transitions and scenarios. But even the people I coach people all over the world, and these types of things are relevant in business and will continue to be relevant in business for many years to come. And why is that? Because everything in life is temporary. Every leadership role, every job you have, in the grand scheme of things is temporary. And in leadership, especially, if you think about it, think about the president of the United States. There's a 4-year term limit on that. Now, so you can get reelected another 4 and max out at 8 years, but that role is maxed out at a 4-year term, and then somebody else has an opportunity to contend for that role, and so forth. You think about the military. I have a military background. Most of you know that. And in the military, as an officer, as a leader, you stay somewhere for 2 to 3 years, and then you're moving. You're growing into that next role. You're going from one level of the organization, mid-level, up to senior level, up to staff level, up to corporate level. And the whole point of leadership and people moving around is, one, to give people the breadth of experience they need to grow as a leader and maximize their potential as a leader. But if you really think about it, leadership is powerful in that leadership doesn't really work if people stay in roles forever. Like the goal of a leader is to come in and do their thing and then make it better, and then move on and give other people opportunities to do the same thing. If we just get in there and camp out for 10, 20 years and never leave a position, then we're not really innovating. We're not really growing and maneuvering and adapting as fast as we need to. So if you think about leadership at a kind of a strategic level, at the end of the day, you can really boil leadership down to 3 simple things. Leaders motivate and influence others. Leaders set people up for success. And number 3, leaders grow new leaders. They grow the next generation of leaders up underneath them. And so, typically how this goes, from a very simplistic viewpoint, a leader gets promoted, gets put into a position of leadership. Normally, what I recommend is when you come into a new position, that the leader assess the company, assess the department, assess the agency, assess whatever that may be for them. They assess that, like, what am I getting into? How is this place working and performing? And how are people working together? Are they is morale high, is morale low? Are we efficient and effective? Or are we clunky and kind of weak in some areas? And you kind of assess that. And based off, what that is, then you go to the next step, right? You kind of map out a vision of the future. Where is this thing going? What do we want this thing to look like? What does excellence look like? What are we defining as success here into the future? And then you go on to creating a plan and executing that plan to go through those motions to achieve those kinds of objectives. And then, about the time you get it figured out and running as a well oiled machine, it's about time to turn it over to somebody else at the appropriate time. And during these kind of transitional periods, things happen in the middle of these processes, in the middle of these transitions of new leadership, driving, progress and momentum and leadership coming in and out, and things just change. The world changes, world leaders change, the economic landscape of the global economy changes and ebbs and flows, and there's things like pandemics that come up, natural disasters. I mean, all kind of different things that can disrupt that and challenge you and create obstacles and challenges during that journey. And so sometimes leaders are the horsepower, the thrust that propels an organization forward, and sometimes leaders are the ones holding the organization back. And so today I just want to share some testimony. I want to share some things with you that I think are important for you understanding where you are in your leadership journey and when it may be the right time for you to step down, you to step aside. So, I'm going to share today the top 5 signs or indicators that it may be time to make a move and bring somebody else in behind you. So, the first thing I think is important is your health. There's nothing more important than anybody's life than their health, right? You got to be healthy to think straight. You got to be healthy, to keep up with the demands, right? And so the first sign or indicator that it might be getting time for you to depart is physical and mental decline. Maybe you're getting elderly, maybe things are slowing down, maybe you've had some issues, a stroke or a heart attack, maybe you got diagnosed with a disease, diabetes, cancer, bad things happen to good people all the time and sometimes unexpectedly. And so when you see a decline in your health, when you see that affecting your ability to think, your ability to make good, sound judgments and decisions, when those things are preventing you from being your best and providing the motivation, inspiration, the vision, the guidance, and direction of the organization in an appropriate manner, then it's time to start thinking about your options there, right? What you don't want to do is be the choke point of the organization just because of some things going on that may be on your control. A good example of this is something we're seeing playing out here on a national stage with the current situation with President Joe Biden. He's a good man. He's dedicated his life to public service for many, many years. I think over 40 years, and he's done a lot of great things for this country. But at the end of his term here as president, as we kind of creep into the election year here in 2024, we're seeing, very visibly a decline in his health and his mental posture and in his ability. We saw that in the debates when he debated, former President Trump. You saw him really struggling to process and think and respond and stay focused, stay on target with his messaging and things like that. You see him, people are posting things where he falls downstairs and he's just struggling, in a physical manner. And I think, those things led to, people in his circle asking him to step down and not run for reelection again, and give somebody an opportunity. While that is sad to see, and you don't want to see a president of the United States of this great nation, exit his political career in that manner, it appears that that's the best case. And I applaud President Biden for recognizing that and being courageous enough to step aside, knowing when it was the right time to step aside. So first off, first sign is mental or physical decline, and that's starting to affect the organization's time to step aside. Let's move on to number two. This one's really, really important. They're all important, but I think this one is an interesting one. Number two is when you lose your passion and your purpose of who you are, where you are, why you are leading in the first place, why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes life gets difficult. It gets busy. We get stretched in a lot of different directions at the same time, and we get so caught up in all these different dynamics of business, the marketing, the sales, the leadership, the customers, the innovation, the technology, the systems, the processes. And those things can, if you're not careful as a leader, especially if you're a founder of something, you're the creator of products and services, and the company was built by you, especially in those situations, you can start losing your passion. You can start losing that purpose and get caught up in these things, and it causes problems. And some of the signs that you will see in that situation is being more negative. So if you're a leader, ask yourself, have I lost my passion? Am I becoming more negative? Am I becoming more critical, more judgmental? Am I more temperamental? Am I snapping at people more? Am I missing meetings? Am I getting complacent? Am I kind of checking out and caring less about the people and the things going on? Am I just kind of ignoring things and avoiding things and just getting lost in the shuffle of things and losing, clarity on things? Are you getting tired? Are you getting more reactive, whereas you used to get up early and be more proactive? Are you getting more frustrated? Are you becoming more emotional about things? Are you letting things get to you more than they need to? These are all signs that you may be losing your passion, and you may be becoming less happy with where you at and what you're doing. And when leaders start losing their passion, you question why they're doing what they're doing. And when they lose their passion, when they lose their purpose, they inevitably become a less effective leader. They're not as mentally present. They're not observing the things and serving those underneath them in the best ways that they can. And so that starts having problems. And again, as a leader, you're an example. The culture, the tone, the morale, everything centers around leadership. And so when you start losing passion and purpose, there are some negative signs of that starts pulling on other people, and they're going to start behaving and talking and acting in those ways as well, which is counterproductive to what the organization is there to do. And so when you're experiencing those kind of things, it's time for you to either recalibrate and reset and get your head back in the game and get refocused and move forward, or consider some options of stepping down and putting somebody else in that's got the drive, the determination, the passion, the things that are necessary to really motivate everybody and push everybody through to the next level of success. I'll give you an example of this. I worked with a leader one time, in the technology sector, and this person was a literally a genius on the IQ scale. He was brilliant, had a PhD in engineering, and he was one of the best, smartest minds in engineering and software development. And he came up with some amazing things, and he built some companies around these amazing things. And they worked for a while until they got to a certain point where he started becoming less passionate. He got pulled into too many meetings, got pulled into too many things that stretched him, and he wanted to be the person that was driving the excellence. He wanted to be the person, driving the next round of products and innovation. And him being the leader, him being the CEO, him doing all of the things that were required at that level, he just got short tempered. He just got frustrated, and he just struggled. And he would work himself to death to try to keep up, and he struggled to keep up. And then he'd just go away for a couple of weeks, and he'd be gone, and then he'd come back and he'd be renewed energy again, and he'd storm through and have all these ideas and have meetings and go 18 different directions and wear himself out again, lose his passion, lose his commitment, get discouraged in this process. And it was a cycle. Every few weeks he went and he just burnt himself out by not doing things differently. And there came a point where, I asked him, I said, look, do you want to run the company, or do you want to be the guy in the lab, coming up with all the cool gizmo things that you're coming up with? He was brilliant, and he had great products and services. They sold like hotcakes, but the rest of the company was struggling to support that. And so what we ended up doing is bringing in a leader to run the company, to run the business, the holistic aspects of the business functions that surrounded its products and services. And things went a lot better. And he, eventually, over a few years later, he had an opportunity to sell his products and services, sell the company to somebody else that was wanting to take it a different direction, and it was a great exit strategy. But when you start losing that passion, it's time to start thinking about, a different opportunity. All right, so there's number one. Number two. Number three, the third indicator sign that it may be time for you to step down as a leader is when things are going really bad. There's a series of things evolving, getting bad and worse, and even more worse than that. And you can't turn them around. The leadership in place is so far behind the curve, or they're incapable of turning the ship around, that you need new leaders. When things get really, really bad and you can't turn it around in a relatively short amount of time, it's time to step aside and allow some different leaders to come in. Because here's what happens when things start going bad, there's repeat work. Quality suffers, customer service lags, you have more defective parts, you can't keep up with current orders, your delivery times aren't being met, you're going over budget, you're losing track of things. When things start going bad, they start snowballing. Bad things don't get better over time unless you take, drastic measures. And I think a couple of areas, where we see this a lot is sometimes, in the automobile industry, you'll see a lot of recalls and, you know, just things happening with quality, people, engines catching on fire. I remember back in the day, a number of years ago, Firestone had a big problem with their tires, and they would blow up and, cause wrecks and accidents because the tires would come apart and there were some defective issues with it. You see this in, with some of the automobile manufacturers. I've seen some that, the engine would turn off, automatically, or an engine would catch on fire, or, some glitchy thing would happen and cause an issue, and people would get in wrecks, or, drive off the road and get hurt or injured, et cetera. When things go bad, sometimes it could be things that are unethical, immoral. Things could be laws can be getting broken. The people start losing confidence in the company. The brand reputation is starting to really suffer. There's a lack of trust and confidence in the products and the services. Sometimes when things go really bad, there's scandals and stuff in the news that are just blowing up. There's safety incidences or security breaches. That's a big thing right now, is a lot of companies, struggling to protect their data, and their customers' data from being exploited by, the hackers out there, right? And so, a couple of examples of when things are going really, really bad, there's usually some undertow. There's reasons why they go. It's not just because you walked in on a Monday and all things went to hell in a handbasket, right? Bad things that happen and get that bad off are usually, in the works for some period of time, and then there's this cascading effect where, boom, there's a tipping point, and things just kind of get out of control, and then you can't recover from it, right? So, a couple of things that, a couple of examples of that is back in 2010, we had the BP oil spill out in the Gulf of Mexico. There were some malfunctions and some things that happened on the oil rig, and it allowed a bunch of oil to come out of the bottom of the ocean and pollute the Gulf, and covered and killed animals and fish and birds and seagulls. And it was a really, really bad event for BP. Another example, like Wells Fargo, back in 2016, they had a scandal where they were creating fake customer accounts just to show, their board and their investors, how much business they were growing. Just this past weekend, we've had the Starlink aircraft that was in space that took our astronauts into space. There were some issues with it, and it wasn't able to safely return our astronauts back to Earth, and it came back to Earth on its own, empty. And we're having to put another plan in place to put another craft up into space to, get our astronauts out of space. And so there's a lot of bad press about that. But also on the aircraft side, right? There are a lot of their aircraft doors are blowing off, engines are having issues. There's a lot of quality control issues with these airplanes that's causing these airplanes to malfunction and be, a major safety issue, and even some incidences and crashes of these airplanes. And it's really lowered the confidence of people out there in the quality of how they're building these airplanes. And they've testified in front of Congress, and it's just there's no good way to get out of this. This is just, it goes from bad to worse. And I think the only way this is going to change, because leadership knew, the employees knew where the issues were. They did up channel things to the leadership, and the leadership, I don't think seems to be handling that in the appropriate way. And so I do foresee, as in these other examples I've given you, there's always leadership changes in that situation, and you have to recognize when things get really, really bad, that's a sign that things have gotten away from you, or it may require a different perspective of leadership to move the company forward. All right, so there's the top three. Let's move on to number four. The fourth sign or indicator that it may be time for you to step down is when you have said something or done something as the leader to make things uncomfortable or unproductive in the workforce. Unfortunately, things happen in the workforce caused by leaders. When I was in the Air Force, even the military, people think of the military as a very disciplined place where we follow the rules, and it is a very disciplined place. But every once in a while, there are people that will abuse their power. There are people that do things to create some unnecessary, strife in the organization. There was a four-star general when I was in the Air Force, and he had made some sexual advances to a younger officer that was on his team, and it created things to be uncomfortable. And they couldn't work together. And she turned him in for harassment and won, and he was forced to retire as a result. That's just one example. But, when you think about leaders, leaders set the tone. The culture is built around the leader and how the leaders conduct themselves, the example they set. And, the goal of a leader is really to come into an organization and bring out the best in the people, figure out what motivates them. Make sure you put the right people in the right place. Empower them with all the right tools and resources and things they can be really excellent at their job to execute the things that you're asking them to do in your organization, right? The goal is to bring the best out into people. And sometimes leaders can be selfish, they can be thinking temporary, and they can say things or do things in tough situations that can blow up, go viral, and create a lot of problems for people. And the leader always, always is responsible for those types of things. Here are some things that you may recognize when these things are happening that are making people feel uncomfortable here. It could be micromanaging. Sometimes leaders have fears of failure, and they may not trust people enough to do things, and so they follow up and they micromanage and they got their finger on the pulse of things too much, and it just doesn't allow people room to breathe and learn and figure out how best to do things. And leaders can suffocate people and make them feel like you don't trust them, like you don't like them, and you got to be there every minute of the day watching everything they do, and that creates problems. We talked about harassment. Anytime there's any kind of perceived harassment, whether that's sexual harassment or any other kind of a harassment, never ever a place in the workforce for that. Sometimes leaders, get upset and angry or frustrated with things or people, and they're not understanding things, not doing things at the level that they feel they should be. And sometimes they talk down to people, they dress people down in front of other people. That certainly makes people feel uncomfortable. Bullying. Sometimes people are bullies. Some people, for whatever reason, they just want to, they see a weaker person in the group and they'll pick on them and bully them. I've seen that quite a bit myself in my career, where I've had a boss that was kind of a bully, and if he kind of smelled blood in the water on you, and you had a weakness, he would exploit that and drill on that and drill on that and kind of demean people. And that's just not fun. It's not the right way to be. Sometimes people, do inappropriate things like steal, lie, cheat, be or not serve with the utmost integrity. Those create a lot of challenges in the workforce for everybody. This has across the company impact because it causes high turnover. It causes reputation damage. People don't want to come to work there. It causes mistrust with your client. It causes people to, take more time off. You'll see higher levels of sick leave. You'll see people missing work more frequently when these things, because people are avoiding these situations. They're unhappy. They don't feel safe. They don't feel, like things are going right, and they're trying to avoid it. Sometimes, you'll there's fear of losing jobs, fear of retaliation, fears of these kinds of things come out of these situations. So when you see these types of things happen, um, and you are the leader, then it might be time, and you're contributing to that and are a part of that, and people are coming to you complaining about you, and you are starting to recognize that you're the problem. It may be time for you to step down. A couple of examples of this situation is a guy named Travis Kalanick. He was the founder and CEO of Uber. And through his journey in that role, Uber started taking a hit. People were getting assaulted in the Uber program. There were, some of the drivers weren't being vetted, with criminal background stuff. The CEO and the founder himself was accused of sexual harassment and doing things inappropriately in the workplace. And he was eventually removed, and they brought in a different leader to move Uber forward. Another example, if you've heard of Fox News, most people have. A number of years ago, the guy that was running Fox News, his name was Roger Ailes. He was um, creating a lot of, he was kind of like a dictator in the organization. He was a very hard driver, and he would hold things over people's heads, and he would harass people in a lot of different ways. And he eventually was removed from that role as well. So those are the top four. I have one more to share with you that I think is important for you to consider if one of these situations is happening to you, that, it's just a sign that maybe it's time for you to step down. Here's number five. The organization is not growing. It's not improving. It's not moving forward. It's stagnant. It's kind of stuck. It's hit a ceiling, and it's been that way for a while. There could be a lot of different reasons why that's happening. But again, that goes back to leadership. If leadership's allowing that to happen, then what is the leadership really doing? What's the purpose of the leadership in the company if you're not moving it forward, if you're not making improvements and progress in some form or fashion? This one is a tough pill to swallow if you're a leader, because, sometimes things especially in a larger size company, can beyond your control. But as the leader, you certainly have influence to um, move things in the direction you want it to move. Hold people accountable for these things. If people can't do what they're supposed to be doing, moving them out of the way, putting people in, where you see some signs of this is when leaders take too long to make decisions, when there's analysis paralysis, when they are denying or avoiding situations that they need to deal with, when there's some fears of the unknown, fears of, doing something and it going well, fears of something not going well, and the repercussions of that. Like, a lot of times leaders get stuck themselves, and they will not make decisions. They may have an employee working for them, another leader, another supervisor that's maybe toxic, and they're just dragging their feet on letting them go, or holding them accountable, or having hard conversations, right? These things are hard things to do that are necessary in a position of leadership, and you have to deal with them. Again, bad things don't get better over time unless you take action, unless you make results happen by, doing things to overcome that situation. And so these are the kinds of things that leaders struggle with. I saw a lot of leaders I talk to, especially in the small to medium sized companies. Too many things revolve around the leader. Too many decisions revolve around them. Too many approvals, too many whatever revolve around them. And that slows everything down. They are the bottleneck. You can't be the bottleneck in leadership. You have to delegate that. You have to keep these things moving and structure the organization in a way that keeps everything running like a well-oiled machine. Example of that, I worked with a group about 3 years ago. They're about 3,000 employees, and they're in the insurance subrogation business. And the leader of the company, the owner of the company that started it, was a brilliant man, good businessman. He was an attorney by trade, and he was really sharp. And he took this business, up to around 3,000 employees over his time in the business, and he really built a niche, really built a top, you know reputable company, but he was kind of leader that he liked things his way. And he was, very much a stickler for the rules, and people had to wear certain things and they couldn't put certain things in their office. And, things had to be organized a certain way. Everybody had to come into work at a certain time. Everybody left at a certain time. Nobody could, they were very, they were not very lenient with flexible schedules. And there came a point where the company hit a ceiling and it just was not able to move forward and sustain the growth that it had built, because there were too many things centered around this particular leader. Good heart, good intentions, but missing the boat on a number of different leadership areas, and it stopped growing. People started leaving. They felt like this was, there was just too many rules. It's this, you're shackling me, you are handcuffing me and not allowing me to be my best or work at my best. And it created a lot of challenges and issues. And eventually the leader ended up leaving and he retired. He kind of became overcome by events. And a new leader came in and made a lot of changes that really allowed this to propel forward. Think about an administrative office that would not that forced people to come in every day at a certain day and a certain time. I mean, even to the point where the traffic, because there were so many employees coming and going at the same time in the mornings and afternoons, that it clogged up traffic for about an hour and a half in the area where this was. I mean, there was a lot of repercussions for this. And the city leaders and, people that were running the city that this place resided, they were come to them and, hey, can you do something about the traffic? This is, causing major traffic jams. And it wasn't until the new leader came in before those kind of changes were made, and the company was able to move forward. So those are the five, right? I'll repeat them for you again. The five top signs that it may be time for you to step down is if you're having mental and physical decline, when you are losing your passion and purpose, when things are going bad and you can't turn that around, when you as a leader have said something or done something yourself to cause people to feel uncomfortable or make the work environment unprofessional, and people can't, thrive and be their best. And number five, when things are not growing or improving or progressing at a pace that it should be. Okay. So I will challenge you in these five things. These are the top five things that, as leaders, we will eventually come to a point where we'll need to be thinking about these things. And so I ask you, where are you in your career? Where's your business? Are you progressing forward? Are you killing it? Are you struggling? Where are you in your business? Is it going as well as it should be? Number two, where are you at in your personal career? Where are you at in your leadership development, your ability to lead an organization to the next level, your ability to motivate and influence people, your ability to grow new leaders, your ability to set people up for success, your ability to solve problems in a timely and efficient manner? Where are you in your leadership? And are you recognizing any of these signs? Have you seen this in your own company? Have you seen this in other people's companies that you may work with? Right? I guarantee you've seen these at some point. And so I just ask you to, just take a step back and reflect on where you are. Where are your subordinate leaders, your managers, your supervisors? Are they struggling with any of these things? Or any of these things that I talked about today present in the organization? And what are you doing about it? Are there opportunities to overcome it? Do you need to make changes? Or is this something you may need to be thinking about as far as, well, maybe the situation has just gotten to the point where we just need to move some people out of the way. Maybe I need to move out of the way. Maybe I need to step aside. Maybe I need to bring in a bigger, better leader that's got the energy, the passion, or whatever it's going to take for the greater good of the organization. Good news is, if you are thinking about these things, maybe struggling with these things, concerned about these things, there's help. There's help out there. Ask for outside help. There's nothing wrong with asking for folks that are coaches like me, or consultants out there in the world, or whatever, to business, experts, to come in and maybe assess things in your company, talk with you and assess you and your team, and give you some feedback, unbiased outside feedback on how things are going. Do you have the right people? Have they hit a ceiling? Is it time to think differently or bigger? And so as leaders, we need to always be, evaluating these things, staying in tune with these things, and making the right decisions at the right time. And so I ask you to think about that. And if you need anything, or want to ask questions, feel free to reach out at any time. I do this with people all the time. Happy to help you, happy to be a resource for you. And so if these apply to you, it may be time to make a change. And change is not bad. Sometimes as leaders, we have to put our pride aside. We have to put our own personal agendas aside, our egos aside, whatever that may be, and make right decisions based on the current conditions and what's best for the group as a whole. And so I hope you got a lot of value from this. I get people asking me these things, and we talk about leadership all the time. When I'm out and about talking to folks, when I'm coaching with folks, this always comes up. We're always dealing with personnel related things. And so I just want to kind of share this and my expertise and experience with you. And hopefully this helps you. So that's it for today's show. Feel free to reach out if you need anything else. Next week, we got a really, really cool show for you in store. We have an entrepreneur, a young, vibrant, badass entrepreneur, female, in a male dominated industry that is killing it, that is setting a stage for a whole new direction for the industry as a whole. She's a trendsetter. She's an amazing person. She's got just an awesome, attitude and lot of motivation out of her. And she's going to be on the show next week. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurism and what it's like to, be a woman in a man's dominated business, and how to break through the changes that are going on in the workforce, and how to disrupt, how to, kind of gain that competitive edge, and how to not be in a situation we just talked about on this episode. You're going to get a lot from her. She is an awesome person. I'm looking forward to having that conversation with her next week. That's it for today. Hope you have a great week, everybody.